Welcome back to my channel. If we haven't met before, I'm Prang, very nice to meet you. I talk about all things food, fitness and health and productivity. I'm also a massive foodie, so I love eating and cooking. I'm very excited to share with you what I cook and eat this week. These meals are vegetarian friendly, some are vegan or plant-based friendly. These can be meal prep, easy to make and also budget friendly. I have a lot of scrap vegetables left, so the recipe that I cook this week are pretty much like meals that are great for scrap cookings. These are always the problem that you have bits and bobs of vegetables lying around in the back of your fridge and then you don't know what to do. And this week has been very busy. I needed something quickly, something nutritious, high in protein but also easy to put together. I'm sure that this is gonna resonate with so many of you guys. If this is your vibe, just come to my kitchen. The first dish is my go-to lately, a tahini miso veggie noodle using these dry rice noodles that you can find in most supermarkets. I've been obsessed. I don't know why I didn't have this before. I found myself come back to this over and over again whenever I want high volume, high fiber, balanced meal that doesn't require a lot of cooking or washing up. Started by chopping up vegetables of your choice. Today I had courgette, broccoli, red pepper, some mushrooms, and frozen edamame. It's perfect for using up the last bits of whatever you have in the fridge because the more variety you have, the better flavor, the better texture you get. And you can also add any protein you like as well. Started by sauteing the veg on a medium-low heat pan with some oil, minced garlic, a bit of salt, and I cover the lid to let it steam and leave it like that while preparing for the sauce. The sauce can be anything you like. Today, I fancy tahini miso flavor, so I mix together white miso, tahini, or peanut butter if you want, some soy sauce, a bit of vinegar for acidity, and maple syrup. Mix well and set aside. Then in another bowl, soak rice noodles in hot water for about 3 to 5 minutes. You'll find them soft enough without needing to cook on a pan. Once soft enough, drain them well. To assemble, pour the sauce over the noodle and mix until the sauce is nicely coated. You might want to add a bit more salt or soy sauce to taste, but today I prefer to keep the flavor mild. And then add the cooked vegetables and done. This dish is so simple, easy, and sometimes it can be quite addictive. And I just cook this almost every week. Today I serve this with baked egg for protein and lunch is ready in less than 15 minutes. It is so good and I just can't be more addicted to this. I'm so obsessed. For some reasons, I fancy risotto for dinner. I usually don't cook risotto as much because I find the dish not as filling, especially for plant-based option. So I figured the way to add more fiber and make risotto a bit more substantial using beans. I would call this binotto, but we still use arboreal rice, so maybe not. When we make risotto, it's always white risotto like mushroom or something like butternut squash. Today, I wanted something different, so I was making this delicious creamy tomato risotto. Started by sauteing the onion until transparent, then added tomato puree for extra tomato flavor. And the rice with some paprika. Toast the rice for a bit in the pan until it's fully coated in tomato puree and then followed by vegetable stock. I used stock cube and didn't use a lot of water like I normally would for risotto because I'll add tomato tin later. We'll have enough liquid for the rice to cook. So gently cook the rice with a lid on for about 5 minutes before adding a tin tomato. If you use plum tomato like me, the trick here is to use your hand to squeeze tomato until mushy first. It's much better than using the spatula to break them apart because then you also risk breaking the rice along the process. Continue cooking on medium-low heat, stir occasionally and add water if needed, adding mixed beans around halfway through. And while the rice is cooking, let's prepare the tofu cream. Blend together plant milk. I use soy milk, some tofu, white miso and a splash of apple cider vinegar or lemon juice, salt and nutritional yeast. Add the tofu cream when the rice is about to cook, maybe about 8 to 5 minutes before serving. I mixed in some spinach for extra pop of color. I served risotto with tempeh as my extra protein of choice, semi-dry tomatoes, but this is of course optional. But semi-dry tomato or sun-dried tomato adds more flavor to the tomato-ness of this dish. And of course, risotto can't be complete with some grated cheese. So I definitely be generous with that, and now dinner is served. I was pleased with the result. It was very creamy, tomatoey, and just delicious. The beans also made this dish so satisfying and substantial. The texture also works so well with the rice as well. And of course, I make bigger batch to, have enough for another 2 portions for both of us for lunch the next day. The next dish is one of my most favorite dishes for lunch, dinner, and whenever I want to use leftover veggie, especially cabbage. Japanese cabbage pancake or okonomiyaki is a Japanese dish that I was introduced very early on in my childhood, and I've always enjoyed it. It's incredibly easy to make, perfectly balanced, and so comforting. It also requires minimal preparation. For the batter, simply mix together plain flour, salt, water, baking powder together. I also added garlic powder as I found this enhanced the flavor a lot, but of course you can leave it out if you don't have any around at home. Gradually add water to the dry ingredients until we have the right consistency, not so loose but not super thick, then set aside to rest while we prepare the veg. Continue with the same theme this week. Today I had the last bit of red cabbage, last bits of courgette, and carrot. So let's slice them into thin strips. If you don't have the slicer like this, you can, just slice them as thin as you can. This dish doesn't require things to be perfect. So you can chop into smaller chunks as well, just small enough to make sure that the veg will cook properly. The last step is to add 1 to 2 eggs into the batter, followed by the veg. And you don't have to use all of them. What we're looking for is the veg is fully covered in the batter, not too much, not too little. If you have some cabbage left, keep it for another meal or make into, another pancake or pickle them. In Japan, okonomiyaki normally comes with meat like bacon or seafood depending on the regions. Here I use tempeh that I thinly sliced. I added first to the pan with some oil, then followed by the cabbage mixture. Cook this on low heat with the lid on for 5 minutes on one side. So ideally, the batter has to be way thicker, which means, use a lot more plain flour. So I used a little bit less plain flour and also less eggs. And therefore, I expected my mixture to be on a runny side, but trust me, if this happened to you, it will also work the same and it will taste just as good. So while waiting, I made a quick okonomiyaki sauce, which is a signature that you can't miss. Mix together tomato puree or ketchup, soy sauce, maple syrup or sugar, Worcestershire sauce until you have this thickish consistency sauce. Then it's time to flip the pancake. Flip to another side and cover the lid and continue to cook for another 5 minutes. I also increased the heat a little bit for the veg to have that kind of lovely charred texture and color. There is something very attractive about brushing the sauce over the pancake. It's quite therapeutic, let me tell you. And I made sure that the sauce covered every nooks and corners of it. Normally, this would be served with a good drizzle of mayonnaise, but today I wasn't feeling it. But I topped with some seaweed for umami flavor and the flavor of the sea. It will still taste good without the seaweed, so don't be too worried if you don't have that, but I would highly recommend having the seaweed on top because that makes it very, spot on traditional okonomiyaki. Lastly, it is my homemade granola, and it's been a while since I last made my granola. This granola recipe is developed for Yuan as I wanted us to stop buying granola from supermarket. They can be quite expensive, while granola is one of the easiest things to make homemade and is so much healthier. He doesn't like nuts, which are common ingredients in most granola out there. So if you are allergic or don't like nuts, this recipe is for you. It took me a few times to find the right ratio to create granola that isn't overly sweetened, use a lot of oil, but still form good amount of clusters. For the dry ingredients, mix together oats and some spices, sunflower and pumpkin seeds, sultanas or raisins. For the wet ingredients, add coconut oil, maple syrup or honey, some coconut sugar, 1 orange zest and juice. The key to lovely zesty fragrance is the zest. But if you don't have one, or you don't want to get one orange, you can use bottled orange juice as well. And for your granola to form lovely cluster, you need to add a little bit of cashew or almond butter. But obviously if you're allergic, please leave this out, but your granola may not form cluster as much. Bring the wet ingredient on medium heat to boil, just to caramelize the sugar, and then pour that over your granola mix, combine until nicely coated. Add the granola into your lined baking tray and pop into the oven at 150 degrees Celsius for about 50 to 55 minutes or until your granola is nicely golden brown. Once done, while it's still hot, sprinkle some sea salt on top. The hardest part is to wait for this to cool down completely before breaking them apart, and don't stir too much or it will lose the clusters. Then store in an airtight container and just basically try to stop yourself from finishing it in one sitting. This recipe isn't the most fancy granola flavor, but to me this is like an everyday granola that leaves more room to jazz up with extra fruits, nuts or chocolate. It is sweet enough to enjoy with milk, but not overly sweet that makes me feel a little bit sick afterwards. It is crunchy, toasty, and I can have this every day. I hope you enjoyed the meals and recipes that I cooked this week. Let me know in the comments if you try them, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!